welcome to the deep dive. We take a stack of sources, pull out the real gems, and give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're tackling some really big concepts, things we hear all the time, but maybe don't always fully grasp. Psychological health, mental disorders, and stress. Our mission here is to dive into our source material, this fascinating PDF document, and really unpack the crucial insights for you. Think of it like building a toolkit for mental resilience. First, we'll look at the blueprint, like what does it even mean to be psychologically healthy? Then, we'll explore when things go off-track mental disorders. And finally, we'll tackle stress, how it hits us, and what we can actually do about it.
Exactly. And the goal isn't just definitions. It's about giving you a clear, a nuanced understanding. So you get the what, but also the why this stuff matters for your own life and how you see the world. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with that foundation, that blueprint. Psychological health. We use the term, but what does our source specifically say it is?
Yeah.
Anything that, challenges the everyday view.
Well, what's interesting is it's not just defined as like being happy all the time. The material really emphasizes this state of emotional balance, having a positive attitude towards yourself and others, and critically, the ability to adapt, to handle life's changes. It's more about navigating the ups and downs and still finding an overall sense of, happiness within that flow. And it connects this to some key indicators we might overlook. Things like solid self-esteem, psychological maturity, how well you adjust socially, and even self-realization, that drive to actually achieve your goals. These aren't just buzzwords. They're like active parts of being resilient.
That focus on adaptation and maturity, that's interesting. And self-esteem always seems central. How does the source frame its specific role here?
Oh, absolutely fundamental. The source points to it as a core protective factor. It's not about being arrogant, right? It's about having a realistic, positive sense of your own worth and what you can do. It's like an internal compass. It really shapes how you see challenges, how you interact, how you bounce back when things get tough. If your self-esteem is healthy, you're more likely to see difficulties as maybe chances to grow instead of just personal failures.
Okay, so if that's the healthy picture, it leads us right to the next question.
Sure.
What happens when that balance gets, seriously disrupted? This is where we pivot to mental disorders. What makes something a disorder versus just, a really bad day or a tough patch?
That's a really important distinction. The material defines a mental disorder not as just a temporary feeling, but as a significant and persistent change. A change in thoughts, feelings, or behavior that genuinely gets in the way of daily life. It hinders that psychological maturity we talked about and the ability to adapt. Think of it less like a passing storm cloud and more like a recurring glitch in your operating system that really interferes with things.
That's a helpful way to put it. So what specific examples do the sources use to kind of show this range of disruption?
Yeah, the document gives a good overview of several common ones that illustrate this, like separation anxiety disorder. That's characterized by this really intense, almost paralyzing fear of being separated from people you're attached to. It can look dramatic, like a kid refusing to go to school, for instance. Then you have social phobia or social anxiety disorder. This isn't just being shy. It's an intense, pervasive fear of being humiliated or judged in social settings. Often comes from a deep fear of rejection. It can make things like public speaking or even just eating in front of others feel totally overwhelming.
Right. So much more intense than typical discomfort.
Exactly. And then there's obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. This involves these unwanted, intrusive thoughts. Those are the obsessions that lead to repetitive behaviors, the compulsions. The person feels driven to do these things, often knowing they don't make logical sense, and it causes a lot of distress. Our sources also cover post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This can happen after someone experiences a really traumatic event. The symptoms like flashbacks, nightmares, avoiding anything related to the event, feeling constantly on edge, they have to last for more than a month to fit the definition. It really impacts daily life.
Wow. Okay.
And one more mention is intermittent explosive disorder. This one's different again. It involves recurrent outbursts like verbal aggression or even physical acts that are totally out of proportion to whatever triggered them. It shows a real failure to control aggressive impulses. What's striking is just how varied these disruptions can be,
Definitely. And the sources really seem to zoom in on depression. It affects so many people. What does our deep dive tell us about what depressive disorder actually is beyond just feeling sad?
Right. The document defines it as a pervasive mood disorder. Key features are persistent sadness, yes, but also a really significant loss of interest or pleasure in things you used to enjoy. It's not just a low mood. It often comes with changes in appetite, sleep patterns, either too much or too little, deep fatigue, trouble concentrating, feelings of worthlessness, and sometimes even thoughts about death or suicide.
That's a much heavier picture than simple sadness.
It is. And a really crucial point the source makes is the difference between normal grief and clinical depression. Grief is intensely painful, obviously, but often, even in grief, you can still experience some positive feelings, maybe moments of connection. Your self-esteem might remain largely intact. Clinical depression, though, tends to involve this pervasive low mood that colors everything, and it's often paired with significant self-blame. That's a key difference.
Like grief allows some light through, but depression is more of a total shadow.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah.
And does it mention different types of depression?
Yes, it elaborates on a couple beyond major depression. One is partial depressive disorder, which used to be called dysthymia. This is less severe maybe, but it's chronic. A persistently low mood for at least 2 years, like a constant low-grade hum of sadness.
Okay.
Then there's postpartum depression. This happens specifically after childbirth. It's much more than the baby blues. It seriously affects the mother's mood, sleep, appetite, her ability to bond with the baby. The symptoms really mirror major depression.
Got it. And what about causes? Does the source get into why depression happens?
It does. It emphasizes that it's usually not just one single thing. It's complex. It points to biological factors like brain chemistry, psychological factors, maybe personality traits or negative thinking patterns, and social factors too, like difficult relationships, major life stressors. It really paints a picture of multiple interacting influences.
So it's multifaceted. And importantly, what about managing it? What approaches do the sources suggest?
They outline a really comprehensive set of strategies, things like psychological therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT is a common one. Medication can also play a role helping address brain chemistry, but beyond the clinical side, it really stresses the importance of strong social support, having people you can rely on. Also, actively trying to engage in activities you find enjoyable, even if it's hard at first. And basic healthy habits, good nutrition, enough sleep. And crucially, knowing when to seek professional help. Don't hesitate. It's about using multiple tools together.
Right. A holistic approach. Okay, let's shift to our third major topic. Stress. Something we all know, right? But what does our deep dive reveal about how it's actually defined?
Yeah, universal experience. The material defines stress not just as the external pressure itself, but as the mental state that results from being exposed to that pressure. That's a key point. It's an internal state. And it can really impact your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior. It often shows up as anxiety, sure, but also physical symptoms or changes in how you act. It's more than just feeling busy or overwhelmed. It's a shift inside.
An internal state?
Huh.
Okay. That suggests it could come from almost anywhere then.
Yeah.
What kinds of stressors do the sources identify?
Oh, yeah, they map out quite a few categories. Big life changes are 1, marriage, divorce, moving house, losing a job, death of someone close. Even good changes can be stressful.
True.
Then there's work-related stress. Pressure on the job, long hours, feeling like you lack control. That's a big one for many people. Social stress, too. Things like loneliness, feeling isolated, ongoing conflicts in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The document also points to family stress arguments, financial worries, illness in the family, and physiological stress, which we sometimes forget, like not getting enough sleep, poor diet, or dealing with a chronic illness itself.
Right. The body's own strain.
Exactly. And then there's psychological stress, the internal stuff. Negative self-talk, being a perfectionist, low self-esteem. Our own minds can be a source of stress. Finally, it mentions environmental factors. Noise, crowding, and just having a chronic disease is itself a constant stressor.
Wow, that's a huge range. External pressures, internal states, physical factors. It really covers a lot. So, given all that, how do we deal with it? What coping mechanisms do the sources highlight?
Yeah, it gets into a whole range of coping strategies, breaking them down nicely. For physical coping, it talks about the importance of exercise, good nutrition, enough sleep, and relaxation techniques. Things like deep breathing, meditation, stuff to calm the body down.
Okay, the basics.
Right. Then emotional coping. This is about expressing your feelings, not bottling them up, practicing positive self-talk, and actively reaching out for support from others.
Talking it out.
Exactly. Cognitive coping is more about how you think about stress, reappraising situations, looking at them differently, reframing negative thoughts, and focusing on problem solving.
Shifting perspective.
Precisely. Social coping ties back to support building and using strong relationships, seeking help from your network. Behavioral coping is about actions. Things like managing your time better, setting priorities, planning ahead to reduce feeling overwhelmed.
Practical steps.
Yep. And finally, spiritual coping. Connecting with your values, whatever they might be. Practicing gratitude. Finding a bigger perspective can sometimes help. The source also briefly mentions the physiology, which is fascinating. Hormones like adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, the fight or flight stuff. They ramp up heart rate, blood pressure, blood sugar, getting you ready for action. But it also mentions endorphins, natural painkillers that can create a sense of well-being. Our bodies have ways to counteract stress, too.
Interesting balance there.
Definitely. And the overall message is really about adopting a holistic approach, using various strategies, and again, knowing when professional help is needed if the stress feels unmanageable.
Okay, so we've looked at psychological health, mental disorders, and stress.
Yeah.
We pull it all together. What's the big connection? How do these three pieces interact?
Well, synthesizing it really highlights the links. Having that strong foundation of psychological health, remember, adaptation, self-esteem acts like a buffer. It can protect you, to some extent, against developing disorders and lessen the impact of stress.
Makes sense, like a stronger immune system.
Kind of, yeah. And conversely, if stress isn't managed well, if it becomes chronic, it can be a major contributor to developing mental health conditions or making existing ones worse, like depression, for example.
So stress can be a trigger or make things worse.
Absolutely. And this points to what the source highlights as the broader mission in mental health. It's not just about treating illness after it happens, it's about promoting good mental health across the board, fostering healthy development, creating environments and communities, workplaces, families that are supportive and understanding. That way, we can maybe reduce some of those pressures that contribute to disorders and overwhelming stress in the first place. It's proactive as well as reactive.
That's a really important perspective.
Yeah.
Wow, what a deep dive this has been. We've covered so much ground, the nuances of psychological health, the wide spectrum of mental disorders, and practical ways to think about and manage stress. Lots to take away.
Definitely. And maybe as we wrap up, here's something to consider. Think about how much our daily habits, the small choices we make almost without thinking, how they add up over time to influence our mental and emotional resilience. So the question for you is, what one small habit could you maybe introduce or perhaps change starting today that could help reinforce your own psychological well-being, even when life throws those inevitable pressures your way?
That's a powerful thought to end on. Something concrete we can all reflect on. We really hope this deep dive has given you valuable insights for your own journey in understanding and looking after your mental well-being.